Happy leg day, world. Today's workout is obviously going to be legs. And the way this is going to be set up is I'm going to start out with some end range of motion isometrics for my quads to help, one, improve my range of motion, but also my ability to engage my quad muscles through that end range of motion. So it's going to be more of a loaded stretch isometric type exercise. And then that's going to be followed by some anti-lateral flexion for my core training, which is just going to really help with my overall ability to brace, not just with my abs, but to be able to get a full 360 brace with my core. And then some balance work. Today's going to be a phase 2 balance day, where I do have movement going through my knee, as opposed to phase 1 where there's no movement in the knee, which is going to help with further strengthening my legs and being able to get all of my muscles from my foot into my hip on each leg working evenly, so I can help improve that neuromuscular coordination, to help improve my ability to drive off of each leg individually, and being able to build the strength to generate that drive with each leg. And then we get into the actual strength training section. We've got some squats, because what leg day would be complete without squats? Some frontal plane movement, so more lateral type leg workouts, exercises. And then I'll finish this workout off with more isolated quad focused work, going through like full range of motion with my legs. And that's just going to be to finish out really heavy, more isolated focused quad work. And that's going to be it. And I'll see y'all in a minute when it's time to get it. So the first exercise in this leg day workout is going to be an isometric hold, which is going to really be focused on warming up my quads and my glutes to a degree. If you haven't done this exercise before, I would suggest starting it without any weight. Do your first set for time, see how it feels, and then you can add weight to it if you need to make it a little more challenging. What this is going to do is it's going to take our quads through full range of motion, and then engaging our quads from this more lengthened end range position to help with range of motion, to help with being able to contract and engage quads from this position as well, which is just going to give you better overall control on how to engage these muscles. All right, so starting it out, you're going to be in this tall kneeling position. Knees are going to be under your hips. You can go a little wider if you need, anywhere from hip width to shoulder width. Tops of your feet are going to be flat on the ground. And then now I'm going to have my weight holding a goblet, so up here in my chest. And the goal is to sit back as far as I can, so sitting all the way back if I'm able to. From here, I'm going to push my feet. So pushing the tops of my feet, the ankles and shins into the ground to help lift my body up. And that's where I'm going to get my quads to engage. From here, a little bit of squeeze through my glutes, keeping that pressure and pushing my shins and tops of my feet down into the ground. I'm holding for time. The goal is to constantly keep that tension, pressure, pushing my lower leg into the ground, trying to lift my body up without going too high up. So it's going up just high enough to feel that tension in your legs without continuously putting more pressure in to lift yourself higher up. The goal is to hold that end range position the whole time. So again, knees are going to be about hip width apart, tops of my feet completely flat. Up. Keep keeping this constant tension, pushing my feet into the ground, shins into the ground, glutes engaged, up nice and tall, keeping that tension in through your quads. We go 30-second hold here. After we finished up the reverse Nordic with that isometric, we're gonna get into some anti-lateral flexion core training, which is just anti-lateral flexion. So lateral flexion would be spine moving left to right. So the anti-version of that is being able to resist that pull by having to use our contralateral or opposite side obliques to stabilize hips or core, and ability to keep the weight from pulling us from one side. What this is going to help with is being able to brace fully through your core, just up, holding, staying up as straight as possible, shoulders nice and back, down, nice tall posture, really engaging opposite side oblique. This is gonna improve how well we can resist a weight pulling us, being able to isometrically hold and engage, contract our core. This is also gonna help with shoulder stability as well. So the goal is to keep this side oblique engaged the whole time, because the weight's wanting to pull me down. So I have to really keep everything engaged. So one of the ways, or many ways to train your core, is through the anti-movements. So anti-lateral flexion, anti-flexion extension, and anti-rotation. And then you have the opposite side where it's going through those ranges of motion with your spine. So the anti-versions are being able to resist that movement. Sometimes you may have to resist that movement or that type of movement, depending on if you're doing certain sports or activities, or sometimes where you have to go through that motion, right? So rotation, think throwing, anti-lateral flexion or an anti-rotation. It could be like if you're like a lineman in football, where you've constantly got somebody coming at you, pushing you, trying to throw you off of your center line, you having to be able to fight that external force pushing against you to be able to resist that movement. So there's different applications with core training, both with the anti-type of movements, where it's showing you more of just how to brace and be rock solid, compared to actually having to flow through those types of movements, whether it's like rotation, flexion extension, lateral flexion extension, or resisting it. So you've got a lot of different ways that your core moves and functions, and it's about training through all of those different ranges and functions if you want to really have a strong core, and to really be able to take it through all of your different types of movements and movement patterns that it can do. All right, onward to balance. Single leg squat's gonna be next. This is gonna be a tempo exercise. So we're gonna go 4 seconds lowering down, 2-second pause at the bottom, and then 1 second on the way up. This is gonna help with rounding out the rest of the warm-up. One, by focusing on just the individual leg. So being able to learn how to engage each individual leg, from my foot up into my hip, engaging all of those leg muscles to push, do the squat before we actually get into the heavy lifting. So that way each leg gets their own individual work, unilateral work, to be able to really get all of those muscles firing as one. So that way when we get into the squats on the next set, we're able to really push and drive, use our legs, quads, glutes, and everything to stand up and control the weight. So to do this, you're gonna stand with your foot straight, making that your foot is nice and straight. The second and third toes lined up in the middle of your knee. From here, it's going to be 4 seconds lowering down, sitting back from the hip, just like you would for a squat. So 4 seconds down, knee stays in line with the foot. 2-second pause, and then driving up. Staying on one leg this whole time if you can. So 4 seconds lowering down. 2-second pause, and then driving up. As you're pushing through, really driving that midfoot into the ground. And as you drive that midfoot into the ground, you're thinking of engaging quads and glutes to stand up. We're gonna go 5 one leg, 5 the next, and then go right back into 5 and 5. So you're probably gonna see this here in a couple of reps or throughout this set. As I sit back, my hip wants to kick out this way. So I've really got to fight and use my adductors on this side. Drive up. So yes, individual leg or limb exercises really helps to just balance out any strength imbalances that you have within these muscles. So like for me, it's my adductors and glutes on this side that I have a hard time with. So as I sit back, really got to focus on keeping my knee in line with this foot, keeping that pressure on the midfoot, pushing through, really engaging my quads and glutes, and also having to fight for this adductor to stay engaged, to keep my position, keep this hip from kicking out. Go as low as you're comfortable with going on these exercises. You can go just as low as you're comfortable with, whatever your current range of motion is. If you do need something to help support yourself, you can always grab onto a squat rack or use, PVC pipe, something that you can hold, support yourself with, that you can get a little bit of assistance, or just something that you can tap. So if doing this without any support is too difficult, you can always modify it into something that's more appropriate to your level, whether that's having some sort of assistance. Use TRX, use a cable machine, you use sticks, but that is going to be it for the warm-up. And then next, we're going to get into strength training, starting with foundational movement patterns. That is going to be squats. I'm going to set that up. I'll see you in a sec. Goblet squats are going to be the first exercise of the strength training portion. So I finished up the warm-up. Now we're getting into movement pattern for goblet squats. We're just squatting. If you can get the foundations down with foundational movement patterns and how you train, that's where the basis of really all movement kind of starts from. Squats goes without saying. Obviously, if we're gonna get quads, we're gonna get our glutes engaged, so we're gonna build strength throughout our lower body. With these squats, because we're holding it up here at our chest too, the weight's gonna be forward heavy, which is gonna also help build a lot of core strength, and having to use our core to keep the weight from folding us over as we do the squat. This is gonna be a tempo exercise. So it's gonna be 4 seconds lowering down, 2-second pause at the bottom, and then coming up. Tempo training, one of the good things, the beneficial things that I enjoy with tempo training is that we're focusing on the eccentric portion of our muscle actions. So our muscles, they either lengthen, shorten, or stay the same. Focusing on that eccentric portion, going to help with how well our bodies and muscles can absorb force. The better you can absorb force, better we can transfer that over to really any kind of athletic endeavor that involves deceleration. So whether that's just pure straight line deceleration, lateral movement, cutting, changing angles, anything that is going to require those muscles to absorb a lot of high impact force. Okay, so I had to adjust my grip a little bit, keep the kettlebell from slipping out of my hands. So I don't have chalk, my hands kept slipping, sliding. So that's foundational movement pattern, squats. Next, some frontal plane action. All right, moving on to hip switches. This is gonna be a frontal plane exercise. So working our lateral movement, so left to right movement. With your training programs, it's very important to incorporate different planes of motion. We don't just move forwards and backwards, which is where a lot of people spend most of their time training. We also can move left, right, we turn, we can move full 360. So it's important to train through all of those ranges of motion. You have certain muscles that work in certain planes of motion. For these hip switches, you're gonna get a pretty wide stance. The width is going to depend on your mobility level. You'll have your toes actually pointed out for this one, so that way you can drive off of your foot. So we're gonna get into a lateral lunge. One leg's gonna be straight. This leg, you wanna fire your quads on the straight leg. We're gonna hold our kettlebells. And then with this bent knee, we're gonna push through the inside of our foot to shift slowly over towards the opposite side. And we're just gonna go through nice and slow. Chest up, holding the weights here at our center. The goal with this is to just move nice and slow, nice and controlled through these ranges of motion. And then notice that my hips aren't coming up or down. I'm just keeping them at the same level position, shifting my hips from one side to the other, pushing off of this inside leg or the inside foot. Pushing off of the inside of my foot to drive with that leg. Push, keeping my hips level, and then just shifting from one side to the next. This is gonna really hit my glutes, my adductors, and then with the squats, hit my quads, hit my core. And with the goblet squats, also holding the weight, so I'm getting a little bit of my upper body as well. So as you can see, it's a leg squat focused day, but it's also really like a total body exercise as well. So as my muscles warm up and I get used to doing those lateral movements from that higher range of motion, the muscles loosen up, getting some stretch through my hips. Then I go a little lower, push the range of motion a little more, push the range of motion a little more, and then eventually over time, you get better and better at it, and your starting points become lower and lower. So if you have a new end range of motion and you're stronger through that lowest position, you train through that position regularly, that then becomes your new ranges of motion, your new how you move. Not only are you getting stronger, but you're moving better as you do it. It's not like you're getting stronger and then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, everything hurts, I lift heavy and I can't move anymore. Lift heavy and you move good. Last, and certainly not least, is a more isolated quad exercise, which is going to be a variation or progression or advanced version of the first exercise we did, which is going to be reverse Nordics, where we're doing the exact same thing, except we're going through full
knee range of motion as we do it, which is gonna really focus on finishing out, firing up those quads to round out the rest of this workout. So same setup. For this one though, I actually like to go a little bit wider, so about shoulder width. Same everything where your feet, tops of your feet are pushing into the ground, shins and everything. So you want to keep your glutes squeezed as you do it. And then you're just going to lower back, keeping that tension through your lower legs. We're going to go 4 seconds down, as low as you can. 2-second pause, keeping your glutes squeezed. And then pushing your feet through the floor to bring yourself back to that starting position. Again, we're still working lengthening phase, the eccentric portion of that exercise and movement. So that 4 seconds down, when quads are stretching, they're lengthening and contracting as I'm lowering down. So you've got these contractile proteins that attach to one another. As a muscle contracts, those proteins connect together to shorten the muscle, whereas when a muscle is going through the eccentric, it's lengthening, but still trying to keep that tension to help absorb that force and lower you down at however speed you're working with. Remember, keeping my glutes squeezed the whole time as I'm lowering down, so that way I have a nice straight line from my ankles up to my ears. Oh man. Last things on this one. If you can't go as far back, you could either go to whatever comfortable range of motion that you have right now, which you can do. If that's still too difficult, you could use something like TRX straps, where you're holding on and you have a little bit of support that you can hang on to take off some of the weight from your legs. Or one thing that you can do is just like how we held that isometric. So now we would go 4 seconds down, but instead of leaning back and pivoting from the knees, we're gonna pivot from the knees and hips. So lowering down here as low as you can go, and then pushing your feet in. So this would be a modified version of it, where you'll go so down, 4 seconds down. Everything stays the same, pressure in through shins, down, pause, and then pushing your feet in. That's gonna also get your quads going. So this would be another way to do it. Or, like I said, having the TRX straps. Mechanics stay the same, so that way you're still lowering down, still working that eccentric portion. You're able to get more fuller range of motion from this modified position, so you'll be able to get that better control and engagement through your muscles with less strain. And then you would build up to the full version of these reverse Nordics. So leg workout focused on squats as the foundational movement pattern to be training, and then kind of building everything based around there. So we did our single leg squats to help with that individual leg strength and foot strength, followed by our actual goblet squats to work squats, some core training, and then some other quad, glute, hip focused work, training through some different planes of motion. So, leg day workout, you already know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe, do things, ask questions. If you got any questions regarding any types of training, or things that you see in this video, let me know. Let's talk and get your gains right, because this is how you get the gains right.